purpose of today's hearing is to receive testimony in the 2023 budget request for DOD missile defense programs. Our witnesses are Dr. Jon Plumb, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, Vice Admiral Hill, Director of the Missile Defense Agency, Lieutenant General Karbler, Commander of the U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command and Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense, Lieutenant General Jon A, Deputy Commander of the U.S. Space Command, and Mr. John Sawyer, Acting Director, Contracting and National Security Acquisitions for the Government Accountability Office. I suggest that I forego my brilliant opening statement, and due to time pressure, I would suggest that my ranking member also forego his opening statement due to time pressure. So, unfortunately, and I want to apologize to the witnesses, we are not able to control the congressional schedule, but votes are expected to start fairly shortly and could last 4 hours. So, ideally, we would have a very truncated public session, go immediately to closed session, and I think that is much more productive for at least the members who are here present.
Mr. Chairman, I agree totally with that schedule. I'll submit mine for the record.
Okay. We will submit our statements for the record, and we will submit the witnesses' statements for the record. And is it premature to suggest that we quickly go to 23?
Do you want to have no questions at all?
Well, would Mr. Desjardins like to ask a question?
Mr.
Okay.
You have Mr. Langevin.
Mr. Langevin, I see that you're in. Mr. Wilson, is that okay with you? I apologize for the truncated nature, but I don't want to keep the witnesses here till 7, 8, or 9 o'clock tonight. I know these are busy.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one brief question.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Langevin. You're recognized.
Thank you very much. Thank our witnesses for being here. So as we all know, directed energy weapons such as lasers and high-powered microwaves can effectively engage a variety of threats with speed, flexibility, precision, and on a low cost per shot basis. Despite this, the FY23 budget request has cut all funding for a critical directed energy effort, specifically the diode pumped alkali laser, or DPAL, despite its recent history of success and the proven value DE technologies provide to our warfighters. So for the record, I wanted to ask, can you speak more to MDA's development and pursuit of a rapid prototype and demonstration of DPAL? And most importantly, please describe how valuable this asset would be in your arsenal.
Does the gentleman want this question for the record, or do you want a verbal answer to your question right now?
Well, if we could get that from Dr. Plumb, that would be great.
Plumb.
Thanks, Congressman Langevin. I'll just say fully agree that directed energy is part of our future architecture, and we need to be investing in it. As for the specifics on DPALs and other laser or other directed energy systems, my understanding is those have been transferred to R&E. Admiral Hill may have some additional pieces, but as you know, I'm keen on this particular issue, and I do intend for that to be part of my deep dive as I get deeper into this position.
Thank you. Well, this is going to be a priority for us, and I hope that it will continue to be so. Last question, Mr. Chairman. I'll submit this for the record, and they can get back in writing. So we face conventional and asymmetric threats from our adversaries around the globe on a daily basis, and one of those emerging threats is hypersonics. We've seen recent tests by China and North Korea, and of hypersonics in use on the battlefield by Russia against the Ukrainian people. Here at home, and in this setting, well, since you're going to get back to me, you can both probably get a classified answer on this. Can you discuss our layered defense against hypersonic missiles? I'll submit that for the record, Mr. Chairman, given the constraints on time, and I'll yield back. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman from Rhode Island. I understand that the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, has a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your service. We're going to miss you in Congress, and to be enterprising today, facing the bizarre circumstance we have of these votes. And I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. And for the record, I've got 4 quick questions. And for Admiral Hill, that is that Israel faces the threat of larger, more sophisticated rocket and missile arsenals in the hands of terrorists. Additionally, in the last 3 weeks, there have been a number of Hamas terrorist missile attacks from Gaza against the people of Israel. To address this mounting threat, Israel and the United States are working together to develop and deploy a multi-tiered missile defense system. The U.S.-Israel Memorandum of Understanding on the Security Assistance provides for $500 million in funding for the annual defense systems that in cooperation with Israel. Admiral Hill, you recently were in Israel to view the new elevated sensor missile detection system. Can you update the committee on the state of the U.S.-Israel missile defense cooperation and the funding levels that are being brought forth this year to include Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow? The next question, Admiral, would be in regard to missile and rocket threats from Iran and its proxies, how horrible this is across the Middle East. And we've had the most recent attacks on our valued allies of UAE and Saudi Arabia. And we've seen that Iran has targeted U.S. and allied forces in Syria and Erbil in Iraq. In the wake of this, we have the cooperation of the Abraham Accords. And so what is being done of working together with our Middle East allies? And then third, I'm really grateful for the extraordinary strategic and vital location of Guam. And I hope that the department will continue in every effort to invest $892 million for an integrated air and missile defense system to defend the terrific people of Guam against cruise, hypersonic, and ballistic missiles. And a final short question. I was truly grateful to learn that our German allies are moving forward purchasing the Arrow 3 anti-missile defense shield from Israel. Assuming that Israel procures the Arrow System 3 system, how will we integrate that with our missile defense strategic and strategy in the European theater, particularly to hopefully address and defend the people of Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia? Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. I appreciate his kind words about me. And do any other members have questions they would like to bring up now? It appears that there are none, but it also appears that we might have some room availability issues with the SCIF. So would the gentleman from Tennessee like to ask something?
What is your preference? We don't have a SCIF available?
I think it's going to be another few minutes, and they've already called a vote, so we're really running into crunch time here.
Okay, I'll take a minute or two. That's
Okay.
All right, Admiral Hill. What is our current capability to defend against hypersonic threats from our adversaries, particularly threats posed to critical assets like our aircraft carriers?
Is this a question for the record, or do you want me to answer it now? Okay. Yes, sir. So today, deployed with the aircraft carriers on destroyers is the sea-based terminal capability, which was designed to protect the carrier base against the advanced maneuvering threat. That is the hypersonic defense today that is hard kill. And as you know, we are investing in PB-23 into the glide phase interceptor to add a layered defense capability. We're leveraging all sensors available today. We're bringing that data down to the ships through our command and control, battle management, and communications.
Okay, you requested additional funds for the glide phase interceptor in the MDA unfunded priorities list. Can you describe how these funds would be used, and would they help accelerate the timeline?
Yes, sir. So when I think of an unfunded priorities list, I think if given another dollar, where would I put it? And the items that you see listed there specifically to glide phase interceptor is to risk reduce key technology areas. That's a new regime up in the glide phase, and so seeker work, propulsion work, the old thermal protection system issues, that will help to de-risk the program.
Okay, you'd mentioned earlier, and I don't know if this was for the closed setting, so if it is, just let me know, but you'd mentioned the successes we've had with the THAAD deployments overseas and in the Middle East, and I was going to give you some time to tout some of those successes, if that was for an open setting or was it for the closed?
We can talk about it in the open setting because it's made its way into the press, but the United Arab Emirates, one of our foreign military sales customers, has used the U.S.-built THAAD system effectively in January of this year, and we're successful in all those engagements. Through some work with Central Command and with my good friend General Karbler here, we now have access to that data so that we can pour through it to see if there are any improvements we need to make either to the system or to the techniques, tactics, and procedures that the soldiers employ. Thank you, sir.
Very good. And I don't want to be greedy with my time. I didn't know Ranking Member.
Sadly, it's looking like we've got plenty of time now, because it looks like, with permission of the witnesses, we will only do a brief opening session today, and we will reschedule to another date the closed session, so the witnesses will be free to leave after this.
Well, I'll yield back and then
Okay.
come back if we have more time.
Mr. Lamborn, you have some questions?
Yeah, since we have a few minutes before we head over to the floor for our votes, and then we'll see you all, gentlemen, at another time for the classified portion. But Admiral Hill, we discussed HBTSS in our office earlier today, and you said that hypersonic missile defense is one of your top 3 priorities. How satisfied are you with the current plan for HBTSS, and can you describe for the committee your vision of the full architecture?
Yes, sir. Ranking Member Lamborn, thanks for that question. So the hypersonic ballistic tracking space sensor has 2 major roles. The first is to pick up the dim targets that cannot be seen by the current architecture today. So from a ballistic perspective, we're seeing changes there that make that fight much more challenging. But when you get to the advanced hypersonic threat, which has a global maneuver capability, we need the ability to see it from space. So global coverage and that very close proximity from space to track those sensors. We are on track to take 2 interoperable prototype satellites to space in March of 2023. We will put those in an inclination where we can monitor tests in the Indo-PACOM region. And we'll collect that data as a way to prove out the concept. Did a lot of work on the ground to show that we can extract those hot targets over a warm Earth. Now it's about getting it into space and pulling that data down. We're staying very close to the Space Force as we make decisions on the overall architecture, and our vision is that the HBTSS will be a part of the overall constellation for dealing with that global maneuvering threat.
And just as kind of an update, as much as you can say here in open setting, are we getting closer to a decision where we'll find a contractor or contractors who will help us with the defense against hypersonic vehicles?
Yes, sir. You're talking about the defense capability
Defense
beyond
now,
the terminal capability that we have today. Yes, sir. We have a other transaction authority agreement in place with 3 separate companies that are competing now. We are evaluating those concepts for a down select later this year. So we will go from the current 3 down to the 2. Perhaps the 1, depending on the maturity of those different proposals. But it goes right back to what Congressman Desjarlais asked, which is, how much de-risking needs to be done. We don't have a good sense yet as we're going through that work now and those evaluations. But if we see areas where there are major risk areas that we want to help industry overcome, that's what those investments will be tied to.
And General Shaw, lastly, what can you say as far as the Space Force's role with hypersonics? When it comes to testing and fielding, we're behind our 2 near-peer potential adversaries. So what can you say where we stand in terms of catching up?
Hey, Congressman, thanks for the question. Again, probably best targeted for the Space Force, but I'll do my best to answer from U.S. Space Command. Yeah. We're interested in any capabilities that are going to help us with any of these threats. And as MDA has pursued this particular program, HBTSS, the advantage of this is that we have a perspective from space that is invaluable and will allow us to get after a lot of these threats. To get after the actual technologies themselves, I think that we need to pursue every possibility to hold enemy at risk from longer and longer ranges. I think that's where warfare is taking us, and hypersonics will play a role in that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Colorado. I think the gentlelady from New York is recognized. If you have any questions you would like to ask.
Thank you, Chairman Cooper. I represent Fort Drum, home to the 10th Mountain Division that has been designated the 3rd Continental Interceptor Site. I know that many of you have answered questions on this matter in front of this committee beforehand. My question today goes to Lieutenant General Karbler, who commands the 100th Ground-Based Missile Defense Brigade, a multi-component brigade made up of soldiers from the active duty Army and Army National Guard forces. They are the 300 soldiers defending 300 million people. As the designated 3rd Continental Interceptor Site, if Fort Drum were to receive a missile defense unit, would the force structure mirror that of the 100th GMD Brigade with the mix of active duty and National Guard soldiers?
Congresswoman, thanks very much for the question. I would hope that it would be a total force solution to that. We've seen great success in our missile defense element
soldiers in Colorado as well as in Alaska who help man missile defense, and I see no reason why this wouldn't be why we would not pursue a multi-compo soldier solution.
Thank you. My follow-up is a broader question. So I've been very concerned that President Biden and his administration and many House Democrats have asserted that improved missile defense is provocative when, unfortunately, the U.S. has not taken any moves to dramatically alter the balance of power in the nuclear and missile defense areas, yet all of our adversaries are modernizing their offensive and defensive strategic capabilities. This question is for Dr. Plumb. How has the war in Ukraine, Russia's nuclear threats, and the strengthening of the Russia-China relationship, unfortunately, altered or updated this administration's view on missile defense?
Thanks, Congresswoman. I'll just say that the classified missile defense review has been released. There have been some unclassified talking points. I'm happy to just, for the record, just put that we are committed to developing the next generation interceptor with MDA, and so improving our missile defenses, that's both in capacity and in quality, is a thing that the administration is in fact dedicated to. The Ukraine issue you point out is an excellent one, because what we have seen there is that Russia is using missiles not with the precision you might expect of a modern military, but more as a broad area terror weapon, in my opinion. And so the need for missile defenses has only increased, in my opinion at least, by watching that conflict play out.
And is that shared by the entire administration and by President Joe Biden? Why are we not hearing that from the President of the United States?
I can't speak for the President's view on this specific issue. I will note that we have, I think, already provided over $4.5 billion in drawdown equipment to Ukraine. We have made very strong statements against Russia. We have declared we will defend NATO every square inch. We've shipped about 1,400 Stingers, thousands and thousands of Javelins and other forms of armaments. So I think, my version of that would be that there is a very strong response there and deep concern.
What is this administration's position on a third continental interceptor site, which has been designated in the previous National Defense Authorizations Acts on a bipartisan basis? What is the position of Joe Biden and the Department of Defense about that third site, given the changing and increasing threats around the world today?
Congresswoman, the position remains the same. There is no military requirement for that third site at this time.
Given the increased threats from North Korea and other adversaries around the world, again, and the need that Congress has on a bipartisan basis asserted for a third site. So the administration is just going to ignore Congress's important role in making sure that we have robust missile defense?
Congresswoman, the United States and the Department of Defense are both absolutely committed to a robust missile defense program that is in the Missile Defense Review, that is in our efforts to improve missile defense of the homeland through the Next Generation Interceptor and the service life extension of the GBI. We are buying over-the-horizon radars to work on cruise missile defense of the entire homeland. And there's literally billions in the President's budget request, including nearly $5 billion for a more robust and resilient architecture to track ballistic and hypersonic weapons.
And that includes making sure that
the time has expired.
Great, thank you.
I would remind the gentlelady that I personally have tried to work with you on the third missile site. I am worried about the partisan tone of your questions. We have been given the largest missile defense budget by President Biden and his administration, I think at least in many, many years, if not in history. You have the statements from Dr. Plumb. I think that the aspersions you were trying to cast are misplaced. I should remind you that President Trump, I think, did very little, if anything, to help with the third missile site while he was president. And I recall him trying to be like the best friends, good buddies with both Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. So I think—
Chairman Cooper, I'd like to respond to that. I'd like you to give your leniency as chair to respond to that.
You have my permission.
Chairman Cooper, I appreciate the work that you and this committee have done to work with my office and other members to ensure that Fort Drum was, as it should have been, designated the third Continental Interceptor site. That, in fact, designation happened during the Trump administration. To say that there was no movement forward on investing in robust missile defense during the Trump administration is absolutely wrong. As a member of Congress, I can ask panelists or witnesses any question that is pertinent to constituents in my district. I will continue to do that in the oversight capacity. This administration was clear that they do not support locating a missile defense site at Fort Drum, which puts them at odds with the majority leader of the United States Senate. That would be Senator Chuck Schumer, who has made this a priority. So to get that on record is an important answer for my constituents to hear. Again, we have a strong bipartisan working relationship on this committee, but these panelists and the witnesses deserve to answer tough questions. So I would push back on that, and with that, I yield back.
Do any other members of the subcommittee have questions? Hearing none, it looks as if this public portion of the hearing is adjourned, and we will try to reschedule. Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Wilson?
Hey, one final question for the record, and that is, when I think of missile defense, I am so disappointed that our NATO ally, Turkey, ally of 73 years, really 100 years, that they are now dependent on Russian S-400s. And then India, the world's largest democracy, additionally, S-400s. And it could be off record, but I would like to know what we're doing to try to work with these two very important allies of the United States through foreign military sales, whatever can be done, that America be who they work with and not Putin. Thank you very much.
I thank the gentleman for his question. If there are no other points to be made, I suggest that the public portion of this hearing be adjourned, and we try to reschedule for a later date of the classified portion of the hearing. I thank the witnesses for participating. Sorry for the unexpected delay. Thanks.
Thank you.